In this short video, I'm going to talk about how researchers look at one problem from 3 different paradigms. First, let's take an example of a research problem, and then I'm going to talk about how 3 different research paradigms would view this same problem and how studies might be created in order to fit within certain paradigms while answering the same or addressing the same research problem. So let's imagine that our research problem is that we want to see if there's a relationship between socioeconomic status and standardized test performance. So first, from a positivist perspective, in a positivist way of looking at this problem, we would need a hypothesis. Our hypothesis could be that SES affects standardized test performance. Our method might be choose 10 high tuition private high schools where we know students are going to be coming from a high SES background. In those high schools, you select a sample of students, adjusting for scholarship students and controlling for gender and grade level, and then administer a standardized test to that sample. And then you choose 10 public high schools that serve low-income communities, select a sample of students controlling for gender and grade level, and administer the same standardized test to that sample, and then compare the results between the 2 groups. So in this paradigm, a positivist look on this problem might lead us to create a research study like this. Now let's think about that problem from the interpretive tradition. So in interpretive tradition, you don't use a hypothesis. Instead, you have a research question. So maybe our research question would be, what is the experience of low-income students taking standardized tests? And for methodology, we'll use a case study. And our method would be, the case will be one classroom of high school students in a high school serving a low SES neighborhood. Focusing on one part of the standardized test, let's take math for example, we would, in our case study, observe students in their math class for 4 weeks before the standardized test administration. We would take ethnographic field notes, observe students' attitudes towards the test review, as well as the content of the course. We would interview the teacher about the opinion, that person's opinion of the test and their plans for preparation. We might interview students pre- and post-test administration about their attitudes towards the test and the preparation strategies. We might survey students to determine their SES. Then we would administer the test, collect test scores, and analyze all of our data by open and focused coding. So you'll notice that in the interpretive tradition, we're interested in different types of questions. And depending on your paradigm, it shapes the kinds of questions that you're going to ask related to certain research problems. So instead of just wanting to know about numbers and maybe correlations between SES and test score, instead, we are interested in a more rich, full picture of how students are experiencing taking standardized tests. From a critical perspective, so a critical paradigm might have a research question like, do standardized tests alienate low SES students? So see how hypothesis and research questions are different from different paradigms. The methodology might be critical discourse analysis, and our method might be to obtain copies of the standardized test, analyze the vocabulary used, the situations presented, the readings and the problems by paying attention to how race, class, gender, and language variety are presented. So this is just an example of how one problem can be seen from different research paradigms, and to give you an illustrated example of how, depending on your paradigm, you're going to ask different types of questions, create different studies, choose different methodologies and methods.